Hi, Jerry Mona with Boater Input. If you're shopping for a pontoon boat, there are a lot of things to consider, and it can be pretty overwhelming. So to help you find the right boat for your needs and situation, I traveled down to the 2025 Houston Boat Show, where I climbed aboard a number of pontoon boats to help point out some things that you should be considering. So in today's comprehensive video, I'm going to go over things like talk about the different layouts, what to look for in terms of construction, key features to consider, to help you to find the right boat for your particular needs and budget. Now, at the end of the video, I'm going to also share with you a free resource that you can download where it'll summarize much of the information that I'm going to be discussing in this video, so you'll want to stay tuned for that. But before we get started, I want to do a quick shout out to the great folks at SMG Boats in Conroe, Texas for permitting me to climb around their boats in order to shoot this video. You know, pontoon boats have become extremely popular over the past couple of decades. They've gotten bigger, they've gotten more luxurious, they put on bigger motors, and so they have become very popular with boaters. And they're also one of the most versatile boats you could ever own. They can also hold a lot of people. So for all those reasons, a lot of manufacturers have jumped on the bandwagon in recent years, and so there are a lot of manufacturers out there. So if you are shopping for a pontoon boat, or maybe you're going to a boat show, like today I'm at the 2025 Houston Boat Show, you will see aisles and aisles of pontoon boats, and it can be pretty confusing to know what to look for. So in today's video, I'm going to give you a comprehensive tutorial of what to look for when shopping for a pontoon boat to help narrow your choices. So before we get into some of the details, I want to first talk about the two different types of pontoon boats. You have your traditional pontoons, which have two pontoon logs, and then you have the newer Tritoons, which of course have three. The advantage of the traditional pontoon is it's going to be lower cost. A Tritoon, on the other hand, offers a number of benefits. The first benefit is you're going to get increased flotation with having that third pontoon. And with that increased flotation, you're going to be able to increase your capacity on the boat. You're going to be able to hang a bigger engine, and it's going to ride better. You're going to get a smoother ride, especially in rougher water. So if you're someone who needs speed, or you want to do water sports, or you live in a bigger body of water, a Tritoon is probably a better option for you, or something to consider. Now, speaking of pontoons, there's also differences in the size of pontoons. They usually range from 23-inch diameter up to 27-inch or so. And the larger the pontoon diameter, again, the better flotation you're going to have, and the smoother the ride. So that's another thing to take a look at. Now, one final factor to consider with regard to the pontoon itself is there are kind of two different methods of construction. You've got some that are one continuous cavity, and then you have chambered pontoons. And that's what Bennington does here. I'm looking at one of their boats right here, and you can't tell necessarily from the outside which is which. But the difference with a chambered pontoon is that it has different sections of the pontoon that are separated and pressurized. That way, if you ever puncture a pontoon, let's say you run into some rocks or a stump, it's not all going to fill up with water, so it's a little bit safer than a traditional pontoon that is one continuous cavity. So how can you tell the difference? One way to tell is you look at the back of the pontoon here, and if you see a drain plug, this one does not have a drain plug. If you see a drain plug, then it is not chambered, okay? Because a chambered pontoon is not designed to drain. They're made to hold water out. So if you see a drain plug, it's not chambered. But that's just another thing to take into consideration. So whenever people shop for a pontoon boat, the first thing that they typically consider is the layout. It's kind of like shopping for a house, where the floor plan is very critical. Now, there are a lot of different variations in the layouts, but they basically come down to four general types. The first type is the cruiser layout, which is what we're seeing right here. So let me turn this around so you can see it. Cruiser layout is characterized by having basically four benches, benches in each corner of the pontoon boat. So you can see they got benches front and back. And the advantage of this style of boat is that it gives you maximum seating capacity. So you can hold a lot of people with this kind of layout. And because it has those bench seats throughout, they tend to be very comfortable, much like sitting on your couch or sofa at home. The second type of layout I would call a lounger, okay? And so it is going to be very similar to a cruising pontoon boat in terms of the front, the bow. So you still got those couch seats up there. But what makes a lounge pontoon different is that you have a rear facing seat back here. Okay, so this one actually has a swing back. So that could be tilted. You could have it so that they could sit facing inward or aft. So the advantage of a lounge type boat is twofold. One is if you're doing water sports, for example, then it can be nice to have people sitting back in this rear seat position to observe the person out participating in the water sports. Or let's say you are taking two different groups of people. So let's say you're going out with your teenage kids and their friends, and they want to kind of do their own thing. Well, this allows you to have a separate conversation area, so the kids can come back here in the back and do their own thing, or the adults can stay up front. So you create two different conversation areas. So that may be good if that's your situation, but if you're someone who wants everybody together, all in the same situation, then the lounge style might not be best for you. The third type of pontoon is a fishing pontoon, and as the name implies, they're set up specifically for fishing. And so what you'll see differently is that they're going to have these pedestal seats, oftentimes in the front and back for fishing. But obviously so if you're someone who wants to use your boat to fish on occasion, then this is something you might want to consider. It also has other features, like oftentimes they'll have live wells, sometimes a trolling motor, that kind of a thing. But you obviously give up a little bit of seating when you go with the fish model. Okay, so the last type of pontoon boat that we're going to talk about is really a hybrid. It's a hybrid between the fishing pontoons and the cruising. And so you'll often see with bench seats like this in either the front or back, and then you may have a fishing platform in the rear, or sometimes it's the other way around. But usually you have a fishing station in either the front or back, or not both. So that's what I would call a hybrid. So that's for someone who likes to do water sports on occasion, but may occasionally like to fish as well. So this may be kind of a version that may be right for you. Another important aspect of the layout is how the co-captain seat is handled. So, the captain's chair is always going to have a captain's chair. Okay, so no big surprise there. I'm going to show you. So there's your captain's chair. But the co-captain's chair can be either two types, either a captain's chair like this, or some models will have a bench seat along this section. The advantage of having the bench seat there is you can get greater passenger capacity. My personal preference is to have a captain's chair for the co-pilot as well. That way, if you're going out pontooning with, say, your spouse or girlfriend, then you each could have a captain's chair to be looking forward and being really comfortable, rather than one person looking off to the side. So that's just another aspect of the layout. So I've been doing research with boaters for over 3 decades, and one of the most consistent needs that I hear expressed, regardless of the type of boat, is the need for storage. Basically, boaters tell me that they can never have enough storage. But it's not about just the sheer amount of storage. What you really want to look for is the size and type of storage. Okay, and what I mean by that is, what you don't want is just one large cavity to throw all your things in, because it's going to be hard, it's going to get cluttered, it's going to be hard to find things. What you really want is different size storage areas, so that you've got places for large items. Let's say you want to ski, you have a place for your skis. Then you need some mid-size spaces for things like your life jackets, your towels, your snacks. And then you want some small storage areas too for things, personal items like your cell phones, purse, wallet, those kind of things. So look for different types of storage. In addition to that, you also want storage compartments that provide good dry storage. By that I mean that they are protected in a way so that if a wave comes over the deck, or if you get rained on, it's not going to saturate your items. Okay, so you also want to look for dry storage. Now, one of the things I really like about the Bennington pontoons is that they have really good storage compartments, and I'll show you that here, where you've got that whole kind of a liner system in there. So that kind of keeps it sealed, and so you're not going to get the water intrusion, that kind of thing. Now, I will say, if you do have wet items like an anchor or a rope and fenders, make sure you dry those things out before you store those away for long term, just to keep mold and mildew at bay. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to talk about regarding storage is what to do with the cooler. Now, some boats have a built-in cooler, and I'm not a big fan of that. because you still have to lug your cooler down to the boat, empty your contents into that cooler, and then at the end of the day, you have to pack it back up. I'd much rather bring my cooler down to the boat with me and just set it on board. And some boats have a dedicated location to place a cooler, and I think that is ideal, because what you don't want to do is have a cooler location that requires you to kick someone out of their chair in order to access a cold beverage. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about construction. Pontoon boats, much like cars and trucks, have a frame. It's usually, steel beams that are welded to the pontoons and provide that rigidity that you need. So this is going to be hard to see because most of that is pretty masked. So you really can't see the frame on most pontoons, but what you can check is just to make sure that just check the welds for the pontoons, are attached to the bracket, to the frame, and make sure that those welds look like they're clean and consistent. So the next construction area I want to talk about is the deck material. Now, there are three major types of deck materials that are used, and no one type is inherently superior. They each have their pluses and minuses. Okay, so the three main types of deck materials are marine grade plywood, composite, and aluminum. Now, marine grade plywood is probably the most popular material that is used, and that is the kind that Bennington uses with their pontoon boats. And the advantages of that is that the plywood is very strong, very rigid, so it gives you good stiffness in your boat. It also holds screws and bolts very well, and it also tends to dampen sound and vibration. So those are the positives. Now, even though it's marine grade plywood, one of the downsides is if you happen to have water sitting on it for a prolonged period of time, you could, over a period of time, actually have rotting. So with each of these different deck materials, what you have to do is consider, or have to look into, is how did the manufacturer deal with the weakness of that particular material. So in the case of Bennington, what I know that they do is that they actually put basically a gasket layer in between their frame and their decking so that there's no water sitting there. And then they'll also shim up the railings on the sides. So there's a little gap there so you don't have water sitting there that could actually rot. So that's how they deal with that particular issue. So the second type of deck material is composite. Now, composite is it is a artificial material. It's made out of wood fiber and plastic. You may have heard of Trex, which is a popular material that's used for outdoor decks and picnic tables. And the advantage of it is that it doesn't rot. But it's not as rigid as your plywood. It may not hold your screws and bolts quite as well, and it's a bit more expensive, which you might see that in your purchase price. And the third type of decking material is aluminum, and many quality manufacturers use that as well. Now, with aluminum, the advantage is you don't have to worry about it rotting, but aluminum is more likely to transmit noise and vibration and those kind of things. So if you're looking at a boat that has an aluminum frame, you need to look into, what have they done to dampen that sound and vibration so you don't hear that rattling or tinny noise as you're going down the lake. So while we're talking about decking, the last thing I want to mention, and this is big kind of a pet peeve of mine because a lot of manufacturers don't do a good job with it, and that is the deck area on the front of the pontoon. A lot of manufacturers will take the fencing all the way up to the end and leave little to no space up there. The problem is when you go to drop an anchor or land a fish or catch a dock or you're putting on your cover, you're gonna need a little space up there to work from. And so I recommend that you ideally look for a pontoon that has, say, a foot or a foot and a half at least of space on the very front of the boat. And so I'm gonna show you, Bennington's done a pretty good job with this. You can see that they've got about a solid foot and a half or better on the front space here. And there are other pontoons as well. Now this one maybe a little bit less, but probably still has enough room to get around. So that's another thing to look for. So one thing that's really important to all pontoon boat owners is to have good cushions, good vinyl. That's because you're going to spend a long time on the water and you want to be comfortable for yourself as well as for your guests. So what do you look for there? Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that the vinyl thickness is good. And so the way to do that is you just try to pinch it with a couple fingers, and it should feel pretty thick. not thin and papery. Okay, so that's the first thing to look for. The other thing to look for too is the thickness of the padding. Because if it's not thick enough, you're going to feel it when you're going over waves and bouncing over things. And so you want the foam to be fairly thick, as well as pretty dense, at least in the seat area, okay? Down here. That's because this is the area that's going to take the most shock. And so you want pretty good thickness down there. And so, you know, a good way to evaluate that is just to sit in it, get a sense of its thickness. Now, one of the things I really like about Bennington is they use actually different foam densities. And so they use a more dense foam in the seat bottoms and a lighter density in the seat backs because you don't need as much support in that area. So also regarding seats, another thing to look for is the stitches. This is very important. Now, what they do, and which was a good idea to look for too, is a double stitching, which is what they have here. So there's a stitching on the underside, which is hard to see. It's on the underneath. And then they have another stitching on top. Sometimes you'll see 2 rows of threads across the top. So that's double stitch as well. And so that's going to hold up better over time. Now, one little precaution for you when you go to get your pontoon boat, never use your standard household cleaners like Fantastic or 409 or anything with bleach or magic erasers when you're cleaning your upholstery and especially your seams, because you will weaken those threads, and over time that will fail and that will cause a significant damage and expensive repair. Another important feature to pontoon boaters, and this is true whether I'm talking to people in Minnesota or Wisconsin or Texas and Florida, is to have a good bimini top, both for comfort as well as for health factors. So this is what a standard bimini top looks like, and it covers about half of the boat. So people who want to be in the shade can be back there. People who want to sunbathe can do that as well. But if you have health concerns or you just don't want that much sun, then you can actually also get a double bimini like this one here that covers most of the bow as well. So that's something to keep in mind if that's a concern for you. Now, when you get a bimini top, you want to make sure that you get one that is, the brackets are sturdy, that's going to hold up, and that's easy to stow and deploy. Okay, so those are the key things to look for, as well as the amount of coverage. Now, one last tip regarding the bimini top, don't forget to put it down before you trailer your boat. Those tops are not designed for highway speeds, and so if you forget to do that, you may severely damage your boat. So if you're someone who likes to do sunset cruises or boat at night, another important feature to consider is the interior lighting. So a lot of pontoon boats, like the one I'm in now, interior lights that are, in this case, around the cup holders, speakers, they're down along the floor so that you can kind of see where you're walking at night. So that's really handy to have. And you may also want to get docking lights too, so when you come back to the ramp or the dock. So a lot of people like to have a meal or enjoy a snack while on board their pontoon boat. And so if that's you, another key feature to look for is a serving table. And what you want to look for there is you want a table that's large enough that that it's functional, but not so large that you can't get around it. So you don't want to be, getting in the way. So, and then the other thing you want to look for too is one that's very sturdy. Now this one's so sturdy I can't even budge it. Another important feature for boaters is to have a number of cup holders on board your boat. And so most pontoon boats today do a pretty good job of that. I'm on now in Bennington, they've got cup holders by every seat. So that's usually not a big deal. And some boats will actually have a removable cup holder too. So if you don't have a cup holder near you, then you can always do it that way. But for the most part, that's not a big issue nowadays. So when you're on the water, most pontoon boaters like to enjoy some music. And so good sound is very important. Most sound systems today come with Bluetooth, so that's usually not an issue. But beyond good sound, the other thing you want to look for is good sound dispersion. And what I mean by that is you want to make sure you've got speakers located throughout the boat. Otherwise, the person in the front of the boat may not hear the music well, asking you to turn up the music, and so it may be too loud in the main cockpit in order to get adequate volume up front. So you want good speakers throughout the boat. So in this particular Bennington that I'm on, hard to see here, but they got a speaker in every section. So you got a speaker here in the front cabin area. You got one down here in the main cockpit area, and then you also have one in the back. So you got good sound in each section of the boat. Speaking of electronics, if you're into fishing My suggestion would be to get yourself a decent size fish finder at the helm. Now, what do I mean by decent size? In my opinion, you want one 7 inches or larger in terms of screen size. And the reason for that is if you go smaller than that, say 5 inches or less, then you'll be able to read the depth, but not much else. So you'll want one that's 7 inches or larger. If the boat comes with one, great. If not, perhaps you can upgrade it, but that's something else to keep in mind. So one other consideration when buying a pontoon is the size of the engine. And I can tell you from doing years of customer satisfaction work, one of the biggest areas of customer dissatisfaction is underpowering the boat. So if you live on a larger body of water or you plan to do water sports, make sure you get an engine that is at or near the maximum horsepower rating for your particular boat. The other thing that you want to check too is make sure that for whatever brand of engine that's, most brands today are pretty good, but whatever brand is coming with the pontoon that you're looking at, make sure you have a certified dealer, certified mechanic for that engine brand near where you're going to keep your boat for if and when you may need some service work done. So the final consideration, especially if you're buying a new pontoon, is to consider the warranty. The warranty is a pretty good indicator of the manufacturer's confidence in their product quality. So you'll want to take a look at the length or the term of the warranty and how long it is, but also check to see what's covered and what is not. So just to wrap up, I have created what I call my pontoon cheat sheets. That summarizes all the things that we talked about today in about 5.5 pages. Be a good reference item. And you can download that for free from my website, so I'll leave a link to that in the video description. Well, I hope you found this information helpful. If you did, do me a big favor and click on that like button, and be sure to subscribe to my channel to get my latest insights that help you purchase, equip, and maintain your boat. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and I will see you on the water.